I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:36. As we look to approve the agenda, is there a motion or is there, yeah?
So moved.
Okay, so we've got a motion to approve the agenda by Director, I'm spacing on names already, Schultz, thank you. And we have.
Vice Chair Fuller,
Yes.
we were talking about moving an item from miscellaneous 6.2 or 6.6.2 or 6, I'm sorry, to old business items.
And
6.2,
I believe it got moved.
yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
It is now 7.1.3, which is Butler Creek signature authorization. Is that right, Director Southerton? Yes, it is. Yep, and Lori made the move this afternoon.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks for catching that.
I'll second that if we need a second then.
Also, Vice Chair Fuller,
Yes.
there is consider creation of a board reserve fund twice on the agenda. Director Southerton, I think that's your agenda item. And I think that should be in old business only and not in old business and new business. I'm not sure what's going on there. At least the last time I looked, it was the same document for both items.
So it is a new business item to consider the creation of a athletics facility fund.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, got it. That's my fault, my bad.
No
There's
worries.
3 special funds on the agenda tonight. I apologize for any confusion.
Yeah, no, I missed that.
You are fine. Thank you all for being so prompt in catching things today. So yes, again, we are motioning. We have a motion by Director Schultz, and then we also have a second motion by Director Harden. All in favor? Please say aye. Or is there any
Aye.
discussion? Sorry. Oh, we already discussed. Sorry. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Awesome, and that is unanimous. With that, we are moving on to intro to guests, and we have a CEA Appreciation Week, which basically we are making sure to appreciate our wonderful certified staff. And we have a statement as well, which I will be reading off.
Actually, Vice Chair Fuller, we have a special surprise tonight.
Ooh, what
We
is that
have a
surprise?
video of students who will be reading this.
Yes.
So it'll be extra impactful.
Okay,
And
perfect.
so I think tech support over there, Brian, is going to be queuing that up for us.
Appreciation Week, Semana de Apreciación al Maestro.
Teachers serve
Teachers serve
in partnership
in partnership
with the parents
with the parents,
of our communities,
our communities,
children,
children,
and
and whereas teachers strive to instruct students to read with comprehension, write with skill, and communicate effectively and responsibly in a variety of ways and settings, and whereas teachers teach our communities, children to know and apply the core concept and principle, mathematics, social, physical, and life sciences, civics and history, geographic, arts, and health fitnesses, and
Whereas teachers inspire students to think analytically, logically, and creatively, and to integrate experience and knowledge to form reasoned judgments and solve problems. And
whereas teachers help our students understand the importance of work, performance, effort, and decisions directly, careers, and education opportunities, and whereas we support our teachers in their mission to educate the children of our community.
Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Centennial School District Governing Board designates the week of May 2nd to 6th, 2022 as Teacher Appreciation Week, and
Be it further resolved that the Centennial School District calls the community to join with it the personal thanking of and recognizing certified staff for their dedication and devotion to their work.
It was precious.
So Vice Chair Fuller, we have the folks that were in that. The children are Davy Espana, Penny Thompson Rowe, Adrian Bland, Andrea Duran, Daryl Jackson Jr., Keisha Waters, Jackson Klingon, Sinai Terry, and Hadley Barney. So thanks to the Meadows staff for helping coordinate that nice video tribute to our certified staff.
Thank you so much, Meadows, for doing that, especially my alma mater, and I'm so excited to see that. Awesome. Okay, on to approval of minutes. Has everyone been able to read the minutes, and do anybody have discussion before we go on to motion?
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Director Schultz. Sorry.
Second.
Second by Director Andrews. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All approve, or all, sorry, what is it called? All, not all opposed? All right. Seeing that we all have all A's for those motions, the motion passes. On to, we have nothing, oh, do we have anything for public forum? I don't think we
No
do.
public forum this evening.
I didn't think so. On to reports with our superintendent report, Superintendent Owens.
Let me try to cue up this visual here. Yeah, if you can change the setting, that would be great. Thanks. Thank you. All right, today is Administrative Professionals Day, a day that recognizes and celebrates the work of secretaries, administrative assistants, and other office professionals for their contributions to the workplace. We put together a short video highlighting many of our administrative professionals across the district, and please join us in thanking our administrative professionals. We'll see how this goes. You may not get the audio, but at least you'll see the visuals. All right, that was a few of our, sorry, got my volume on here. That was a few of our administrative professionals from around the district. So next up, we have Teacher Appreciation Week. As was mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, next week is Teacher Appreciation Week. Now more than ever, it's incredible to see our Centennial educators continue to rise up to meet the challenges we faced as we educate our students during the pandemic. While I believe expressing appreciation should be a constant practice, celebrating our teachers during a designated week offers the opportunity to take a moment to say thank you and show our gratitude for all that they do. In recognition of our teachers, we will be having a teacher appreciation breakfast this next Wednesday, May 4th, at the Centennial Middle School cafeteria from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Board members are welcome to attend, and you should have received already a calendar invite. As is traditional, we have our administrators who will be serving up the food for our licensed staff, and so that's usually a good time, and we're able to get folks from across the district together, which is not something that we always have the ability to do. This is just a brief update as far as our staffing. As you know, with the changes that we have with converting Oliver from an elementary school into a middle school, our staffing is a little bit more involved this year than it normally is. And so this past week, led by Dr. Katsuda, Centennial principals worked to facilitate position transfers for district licensed staff. This is an annual process, which this year included finding placements for all of our elementary licensed staff. Notifications for impacted staff are in the process of being provided this week. This is an important phase of moving forward with the transition of sixth grade to the middle school level and the opening of Oliver Middle School this fall. A brief summer school update here, and Director Callahan, if there's anything I miss or you want to add here, feel free to come up to the microphone, but I'll just do a brief plug. This summer, we will be again providing a robust summer school offering with with the support of the Oregon Department of Education summer school funding combined with the district's ESSER funds. Participating grades kinder through ninth grade students will experience well-rounded, hands-on integrated learning. We're also providing credit recovery for qualifying high school students and continuing credit opportunities for Centennial Virtual Academy high school students. More information about the summer school offerings will be shared with families here very shortly. Another piece, this past week, the Oregon Department of Education's Federal Systems team completed their review of materials provided to the Oregon Department of Education as part of the monitoring process for Title 1A, 1D, 2A, 4A, McKinney-Vento, and foster care under the Every Student Succeeds Act. That's a lot of educationese. Under the leadership of Federal Programs Administrator Sonia Nelson-Carranza and Student Services Executive Assistant and McKinney-Vento Homeless Liaison and Substitute Board Secretary Lori Paulmiter, who's not in the room right now, Centennial's federal programming was certified as being in full compliance. ODE's federal systems team regarded the documentation provided as the easiest to read of all of the districts to which they're assigned, and that the information can serve as a model for other districts to follow. For this reason, I wanted to offer public appreciation to Sonia and Lori for their collaboration and consistent high-quality work in this area. Well, at least that team monitors, so it wouldn't be necessary. Yeah, so that's correct. Yep. Finally, I would be remiss not to recognize that this past week in particular has been challenging and resonates with some of the tough staffing days that we've had in January and early February. The confluence of normal spring absenteeism, a very limited subpool, and an uptick in COVID-19 are main contributing factors. We've asked principals and supervisors to rebroadcast messaging about the importance of maintaining layered health and safety measures, such as symptom screening, hand washing, distancing, cleaning and disinfecting, and to encourage staff to increase vigilance in light of the regional and district level increases in illness. I will show you just a couple of graphs here that we monitor regularly, and I'll also invite Director Wright to share anything that she would like to add. But you'll see here, each bar represents a different week, and the most recent bar you can see is April 24th. And so this is a graph for staff, and you can see that there were 5 positive staff cases this last week that were reported, and then you can see how that stacks up against previous months going all the way back to the end of February, so you can see that that's picking up a little bit. Then you can also see student cases as well, and you can see it's picking up a bit, and then that compares it back to mid-February. So we're not quite where we were in mid-February, but you can see the trend is trending up a little bit. So we wanted to just create a little bit of awareness around that. And I welcome any questions you have about these topics, and that concludes my superintendent's report.
Questions?
Yes.
Yes, Director Andrews.
Are we still in the green zone for Multnomah County? We're not in orange yet, even though I've heard that cases are ticking up for sure.
Yeah, good question. And so we are still in the green zone using the CDC levels format. those are updated every Thursday afternoon. And so I have it on my calendar each Thursday afternoon or Friday morning to check to see if the level has changed. An important consideration of that is that one of the primary indicators is not test positivity as it was previously because of the number of at-home tests, those that aren't reported to public health and so on. And so what is used is more of a lagging indicator in terms of hospitalizations. So we know that if we're using hospitalizations as an indicator, that can lag by a couple of weeks based on the fact that it takes a couple of weeks from cases ticking up to hospitalizations. So the advice that we were given from the Department of Education was to be vigilant as far as checking that dashboard as soon as it's updated and being able to shift to a higher level as warranted. At this point, it's still green, but we'll check tomorrow to see if it's ticked up to yellow. I'm not sure one way or the other whether it will. Good question. Director Wright, is there anything to add to that? Thank you.
Is there any other question? Yes, Director Shields.
We're tracking COVID, but we are also seeing other types of things. A flu bug, as whatever you might want to call it. Do we now try to separate that data from the COVID data? Or do we, our concern is there's an uptick, that's going to have impacting on our staffing and coverage because of substitutes. We just look at it as a total package of absences and trying to cover for our
Yeah,
students.
and that's why I would say, and hopefully I address what you're getting at, and if Director Wright has anything to add, she can as well. But that's why I say it's a confluence of factors, because it isn't just COVID. It's the fact that our subpool is very limited and has been for some time. And so whereas, and then the other piece is just normal spring absenteeism. There's an uptick in school districts and in Centennial historically in terms of having more employee absenteeism during the springtime. And so when you combine all of those factors, our ability to withstand employee absences, we just don't have the stamina for that just based on the fact that we're not able to fill the positions. So I'd updated the board last Friday just with respect to the struggles that we're having with that. And Dr. Katsuda, this is the first thing she does when she wakes up for at least an hour every morning, is looks at the absenteeism report and sees how we can patch things together. One of the fortunate things is that we have the building-based teachers at each school. They're not hired at every school just because we weren't able to find employees for all of those positions, but at least it provides a little bit more of a safety net than you would usually have, but it taps out every day. So if they're not being used in their existing building, they get redeployed to other buildings around the district. And so that's part of the way that we patch classrooms together as well. But then we'll also take district licensed staff as well, district coaches or even district administrators, and have them fill in classrooms as well. What we normally find, and as you can imagine, end of the week, Fridays are particularly tricky just because they are. I don't think that that's unique to education. More people take the day off on Friday. And so those are the days that we find that we start tipping towards unsafe staffing levels because we're not able to fill every classroom with a teacher, and that's where it gets difficult. I'll leave it there. But I did check with other school district superintendents in East County, all of whom responded, and all of whom responded that they're having similar challenges. So it's, again, not unique to Centennial. It's a broad challenge that's happening across the area, and we're all trying to problem solve to see how we can best mitigate that, because we're at the end of April. There's still about 6 weeks left of school, and it'll be important for us to make sure that, number one, our schools are safe for students attending by having teachers in every classroom every day.
Thank you for that. Is there any other questions? Yes.
If we are yellow, when the dashboard comes out, what are the impacts to the district and the community?
Yeah, so for a yellow, we would broadcast that to the community and let them know that we've moved from green to yellow. In that case, masks are recommended but not required, so personal choice is still a factor there, but we would be indicating, hey, cases have gone up, this is now recommended, but it's still a person's option as to whether to wear a mask or not.
One more question. Volunteers on are we allowing volunteers into the buildings? And, this is kind of something we bantered about, but
Yep.
allowing volunteers into the schools so that we have hall monitors and people on the playgrounds and, to help try to alleviate some of the staffing challenges?
Yeah, that can certainly be one option. I mean, it obviously won't help with regard to being in a classroom with students because you need somebody who's certified to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
But there's other positions where we could use support, such as on the playground or in the lunchroom or other places like that. We reinstated volunteers in the schools after spring break, and Dr. Katsuda took the lead in terms of establishing the process for that because it involves a criminal background check that we've always required. Plus, we have also layered on an additional state-required vaccine check as well. So that's another element of the process. But provided, and it takes a bit for that paperwork to get processed and come back. So, if you're thinking it's a Thursday and I want to help out on Friday, you have to kind of have that paperwork in so that you're cleared to be able to help in the school.
Exactly. All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
But yeah, that's good. And the other thing that I'll add is that we're continuing to problem solve this kind of real time. We met, when I say our cabinet met with Principal of Powell Butte Centennial Middle School and Centennial High School last Friday to try to troubleshoot some of this because they are generally the most impacted schools, just with regard to the number of staff that they have and the number of historical absences that they've been having. And so we've generated just kind of an internal list of different strategies that we can try to employ on top of what we're already doing. And we'll revisit those tomorrow with our superintendent's cabinet just to see if there's more that we can do. Because, it's needed in the schools. And like I said, things are ticking up. So we want to be able to provide the coverage that's needed.
Thank you for all the effort.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Can you hear me? Sorry.
Laurie's back in the room.
Oh,
Oh,
we're supposed to
sorry.
clap for Lori. You wanted to know why we're clapping for you. So for a few reasons. Number one, it's Administrative Professionals Day. Also, because we talked about the federal programs compliance, of which you were a part, and that great monitoring review that we had where they said we were in compliance and our paperwork was a model for other districts. So kudos to you and the team for your work on that.
Thank you so much. Awesome. Is there any other questions? I don't see any. Thank you for that wonderful report. I really appreciate all that you're doing on the COVID front and trying to mitigate what we're facing when it comes to substitute absentees.
Yep, kudos to our team for
Yes,
their
thank you.
work on that.
Thank you all. Next, we are at confirmation items. Is there any questions on the confirmation items that are displayed for us? And if not, can I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Awesome. So we have a motion to approve confirmation items by Director Harden, seconded by Director, excuse me, Lynn. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. I don't see any. Motion passes. On to old business. 7.1.1, we have considered award design fee for CHS athletic facilities, and this is presented to us by Director Sutherton. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So for consideration today, we're revisiting the strategic plan for our sporting complex at the high school. So we have received the fee proposal from our awardee for the civil design and engineering, Robertson Engineering. The recommendation is for the strategic phase 1 plan to be $29,000. The board, should the board wish to pursue elements of the master plan, such as installation of an all-weather field, track resurfacing, or stadium improvements, we would then come back to you for consideration for that plan. So for today, we're considering the phase 1 design work. We also need the board to provide direction on funding, so for the $29,000 design fee. Possible options include bond contingency funds, board reserve funds, general funds, or a prorated share from each of these accounts. The administration does recommend the board approves the award of the civil engineering phase 1 work for $29,000 and provide direction on the funding source.
With that being said, is there any questions on this matter? Yes, Director Shields.
You mentioned the list of where monies could possibly come from, and what we have discussed previously is that it was an interest of our community to do better by our facilities. Having a plan to follow that's been a professionally, I guess, reviewed plan seems to be within an improvement of our facilities, seems to be within our bond umbrella, if that's a way to say that. So are you asking for us to talk about those different sources, or are you asking us to just put one out? Because when you said the list, I went, well, it's like just below the line, it would come from our bond. That was in my head, but I don't know what other things need to be considered in my thought process.
Turn off my mic there, because I hear not doing some interference. So we are looking for direction. It's not currently a bond project. It's not been identified as a bond project. So we are not authorized to use bond funds for this project without authorization from the board. Likewise, the board reserve account requires authorization from the board to utilize those funds. Otherwise, we could use general fund, and it's not been appropriated for this purpose, so again, we need direction from the board. So it really is a board decision on what funding source you would like us to use for this. Understanding that there is a large component that is related to the turf field and to the stadium, and understanding that previously that was discussed to possibly be funded with the board reserve account, that could certainly, be a logical source of funding for that. But as you said, it was below the line on a bond project as well. So I think there's equal possibilities. It just depends on the board.
Sorry, I don't have a question. I have a comment. The BOC folks the Bond Oversight Committee folks were very adamant that we should not be using bond proceeds to pay for the field. Although this is a comprehensive design, I think maybe one of the most likely things that comes out of it is the repair and placement of the turf field. So I'm just a little bit concerned that folks who have been involved with the Bond Oversight Committee, and if we decide to go forward just with this aspect of it, from bond contingency, I'm thinking it's a little bit disingenuous. I would prefer that we, especially for this small amount, use the board reserve fund for this.
Director Harden.
I'm with you. I think we should not use bond contingency funds. No perception that we're using the funds other than their intended purposes for this bond. This fell below the line. The community outreach did not have this as a priority. There's enough other projects that the bond money needs to be used for. I don't think that we should use bond money for this project. I would support the board reserve funds because in my mind, that's what I'm considering using that money, or at least initially helping out with. That's my thought. I mean, general fund, like you said, it's not in the line item. It wasn't planned for with the budget in mind. So being that it's not bond funds, it's not general fund, that leaves us with our savings account. And that's what I would vote for.
Awesome, thank you. Director Lynn.
Yeah, I can appreciate trying to listen to the Bond Oversight Committee, and especially if we could get some questions from them, or if just more feedback, particularly on this, but when I'm looking at the three funds, of course, not general funds, but bond contingency funds is a limited amount of money that we can use for a limited amount of reason, whereas the reserve fund is a little more open-ended. And so it seems like we should use up these bond contingencies funds first and kind of run that account down on appropriate projects, and then go to the board reserve after that's used up. So I'm leaning more towards the bond contingency funds. But this isn't a very large amount, so I don't feel very strongly about it.
Director Shields.
I know that Director Andrews has been serving on BOC as in forever, and so you have a great deal of insight. But it does beg the question, as you were saying, and again, these are this first kind of response. You know, we're hearing it now. We know it's 29,000. It's not a large amount of money, so probably wherever we come up with will be fine. But if the BOC has specific things in mind, because it looks like the bond has been judiciously applied to the projects that were identified above the line. And we may very well have monies available for other things, right? And so that decision-making process, is that, do we agree that that lies just with the BOC? Or is the BOC making recommendations for things that are, below the line? And I'll just keep using below the line because of not really knowing how else to identify it. And are they going to make recommendations to us so that we then can take those below the line items and organize it by, no, we think we want more, well, we talked about more security and more security lighting, and maybe that's more important than using the funds for the expanded athletic facility. So if you could help me understand and remember, maybe it's remember, that we're going to have that discussion with BOC in mind. Then I feel a little bit more comfortable maybe going with the board reserve fund. But you're going to know from me, I just, that board reserve fund, and I understand, like you said, Director Harden, we've been thinking about that as it related, especially to the replacement of the turf. But it's this fine balance, right? And we just haven't had enough discussion for me just to remember, oh yeah, that's right, we've kind of decided in general this is the way it goes. So I think this is why we're having discussions back and forth about it, because I don't know where these lines are, personally. Thank you.
I have another.
Oh, yeah,
question.
sorry.
Or do you want to go ahead?
No, you're
Kristen?
fine.
Okay.
You're great. Director.
In reviewing our minutes from last meeting, we also said that we were going to take some input from students on below the line
Yes, that's right.
stuff.
That's right.
So we have not talked about or even figured out how we're going to get input on that, but I think the BOC may be one avenue, a group of students may be another. I think there are a number of different constituencies who would have input on this. So I think it's important to get moving on this athletic facility design, but at the same time, we need to figure out how we're going to get input on the other aspects of the money.
Thank you, Director Andrews, for bringing that up. That's actually where I was gonna go next. I would love to have more feedback from both those athletes, especially the students, because like I said, they have been left out of a lot of discussions, and so we want to make sure that they feel like they have a stake when it comes to these types of decisions, especially since they're going to be using the facilities and different things like that. So I don't know how we can go about this, but I would like, when is the final, or when do you all need the final thing? Yes, Director Shields.
I think based on what I've heard from all of us, I wouldn't mind making a motion. If it gets a second, then we're good for a discussion on it.
Okay.
If we don't get a second, then
Got
we
it.
can, then we know we're in for it again.
Yeah.
So reading from the board note, I believe I'm on. I move that the administration, or that the Board of Directors approves the award of the Civil Engineering Design Phase 1 work of the Centennial Sports Complex, Robertson's Engineering, for $29,000, and approve that's money source to be the Board Reserve Fund.
Second.
Discussion?
Discussion. My only thought is, I think it should come from the Board Reserve Fund, Bond Contingency Fund, and involvement with students and staff and everybody. I think once we get the design, then we can review that with them. We give them something that we can go to them with and like, what do you think of this template? This is kind of what we're thinking, but for this specific, like to get the ball rolling a little bit, you know, and it's not a huge financial impact, this decision. I think just to move forward with it, we go with the Bond Reserve Fund.
Bond or the Board Reserve?
Board Reserve Fund, excuse me, Board Reserve Fund.
Awesome. Is there, I actually really like that idea, especially since, I know for like when you're working with like, when it comes to business, you have to always have a proposal to show folks to be like, okay, so let's try and come around and see if this is gonna work, for folks, and it's just a proposal. So, I mean, because it's such a small, it's not that much, I don't have a problem with it coming from the Board Reserve Fund. How much, do we know, can we get a count on how much we have in that reserve fund by chance? Huh?
We've got millions.
Okay, we go, okay, so, I don't have a problem with it coming from the Board Reserve Fund then.
To answer your question, Chair, it's approximately 5.65 million.
Oh, sorry, I did not know that. Chair Salowski?
Yeah, I'm ready to take a vote. I agree with everything's been said at the table.
Awesome. Cool. With that being said, and if there's no more discussion, is there a motion? Oh, wait, you already have a motion. Sorry. All approved, say aye.
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 With that being said, we have the ayes have it. And we will make sure to have that, phase 1 be taken out of the board reserve funds. Sounds good? Awesome. So on to 7.1.2, consider creation of a board reserve fund. Director Southerton.
And I feel like there might be some additional explanation here. So currently, the board reserve account or funds live inside the general fund, because that's where, when the motion was passed by this body, was carried out, the funds from the sale of the surplus property were directed to be in a board reserve account in the general fund. So per our presentation last meeting 2 weeks ago, it is a best practice to separate that out, to add an additional layer of transparency, an additional layer of oversight, and to have good separation of funds with specific sources. So that is the recommendation that's being brought forth today, and I'll provide some additional background that's included in the board note. So you may recall in the 2021 school year, after several years of declining enrollment and declining fund balance, the Board of Education, assisted by individual members of the Budget Committee, created a fund balance policy and passed a resolution directing the sale of surplus properties to fund a board reserve account for future needs of the district. The administration worked with the board to identify strategies, sell surplus assets, and make difficult but necessary reductions to put the district on a path towards a stable financial footing. After 2 years of work with the support of the board, the Budget Committee, district staff, the reserves are adequate and stable at this point. Surplus properties have largely been sold, and it is appropriate to establish a separate fund for the board reserve account. Under GASB Statement 54, the Government Accounting Standards Board, number 54, a committed fund balance requires the district to also identify specific dedicated revenue sources, of which fund transfers do not qualify. the resources must be identified as primary resources, such as property taxes or other fees or other income from the outside revenue. It is recommended that the board dedicate 100% of the revenue from the sale of real property declared surplus and 100% of the heavy equipment rental tax to this new fund to meet the parameters of GASB 54. In recognition of the need to create a board reserve account and stabilization fund to maintain healthy and stable district operations in alignment with government accounting standards put forth in GASB Statement 54, it is recommended the board hereby instructs the superintendent, director of business and operations, and their designees to create a board reserve fund in the special revenue funds section of district financing and budget document, and further directs 100% of the revenue from the sale of real property and 100% of the heavy equipment rental tax to this new fund as specific primary revenue sources. I'm happy to take any questions you may have about creating this new fund.
Thank you. Is there any questions?
Is the heavy equipment rental tax, is that something that we receive every year?
Great question. It is. It's a new tax that was brought on by voters and by the county for heavy equipment that is rented in a district where it serves. So there's a minor tax on it. It's not a large revenue stream, but we have to dedicate an outside revenue stream to create a fund. And so it will meet
So
that
how much
purposes.
is it? I mean, how much is, it's not a large amount, but how much is it every year?
Correct. Last year, which the first year was implemented, the district received approximately $2,500.
All right. Is there any more questions?
I move to establish the board surplus fund.
Second.
All right. Okay, so there's a motion on the floor by Director Lynn, seconded by Director Harden. All in favor? Is there any discussion? Are you guys in? All in favor?
Aye.
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 I'm just gonna- Is Director Slosky there?
Aye. Sorry, I didn't unmute.
It's okay. Awesome. So all ayes have it, and we have a board reserve fund created. Yay. Awesome. So on to 7.1.3, authorization of superintendent or designee to sign Butler Creek property sale documents. And that is, who is it? Yeah. Director Southerton, sorry.
Sorry, it's me again. So this action is being brought forth because you will recall the board approved the sale of this surplus property that was not needed for school district purposes or school activities in the 2020-2021 school year. It has been under contract and is preparing to close. It includes approximately 18 acres of real property located at 2789 Southwest Butler Road in the city of Gresham in the county of Multnomah in the state of Oregon, commonly known as the auxiliary Butler Creek property, to be surplus and not needed for the district. As I said, the buyer is ready to close, and this action will authorize the superintendent, director of business and operations, or their designees to sign all required documents related to the sale and conveyance of this surplus property. It is recommended that the board approve this motion.
Any questions? Director Lynn?
Yeah, I got a bunch of questions. This is just to finalize the sale?
Correct.
How come we're not seeing any information about the seller, how and when it was bid, what the offer is, what we paid for it, any of that information?
That all took place at a previous meeting that the board already approved us to accept the offer and have the property under contract. I'm happy to share that information with you. It's Leaper Development is the buyer, and the offer that was accepted was $3.78 million.
And I'm sorry, which meeting was this?
I can't speak from memory, but I can find the document for you. I believe it was in May 5th, if I'm I was looking at previous documents for this resolution, so it was the first meeting in May of 2021, is my recollection. Maybe May 12th.
Oh, okay. So that was before the
Current members?
Current members have been
Yes, sorry, so that you may not been present at that time.
Okay, and was it bid?
It was put out on the open market, and we received several offers. 2 of them fell through. This was the 3rd offer, and it's going to closing.
Okay. And this is to a land developer?
Correct.
Okay. And you said it was put out 3 and two fell through?
We put it out on the market. We received multiple offers. We were under contract previously, and those fell through, and then this is now the 3rd offer that is coming through and going to close.
Okay. I mean, I'm just digging because obviously I want to get the biggest value for this.
Absolutely.
And I want to get all that information kind of in front of me, and it would help to have that in the resolution so that as we look through it through the week and we can kind of research some things. 3.7, I drove by it today. I guess that could kind of be in the range. But I'm looking off, across the street from there. Half acre is going for $680,000 houses. So I imagine if this developer buys it, if they develop half of it, put half acre properties on it, they're getting like $4 million, or that's like $40 million. So I don't know. It's hard without any other bidders that have come through to know kind of what is the best range for the best value that we're getting, or are we just getting the only bid, and is that too low?
And that was discussed in executive session prior to acceptance of the offer with our real estate professionals at the time. I can't commit all of it to memory, and play that back for you. But all that was considered at the time, and we did accept their offer, and we are under contract with them.
So, yes, this took place May 5th, 2021, this discussion that we had this meeting on.
I can show that previous
yeah.
board note if it is helpful, and
Yes.
Director Southerton can verify that this is the accurate one.
That would be helpful, thank you. Yes, Director Fields.
It's also important to note that you listed 18 acres, not all of which are usable. And there's sizable amounts of that property that we couldn't do anything with it, and the developer's not gonna be able to do anything with it either. It was a arduous kind of a process to review how much it's really usable, even though it looks like a big chunk. It's less than that for development
Right.
purposes.
Director Southerton, is this the correct note from
It is.
the time? Okay.
Yes. And there are some unique challenges with the property. This is undeveloped raw land. Adjacent half-acre parcel may already have utilities, may already be on sewer, may already be graded, and this is completely raw land that has quite a bit of development. And that's why the other offers fell through. After their due diligence period, the developers felt it wouldn't pencil out for them.
Thank you. Director Andrews.
I may just mention that it's been a year since we engaged with this buyer, and we knew that it would take a long time because there had to be a significant amount of due diligence with the city to figure out what they could do. So it's not that things have been stalled out for the last year. It's that I believe they were going back and forth with the city. At least was
Yes,
what.
there's been extensive behind-the-scenes work.
Right.
We had to partition the property and have a sellable lot. We had to go through all that process, public comment, engagement, and to do that, we have now it has been partitioned. There are now 2 lots. There's the one that will remain, which is Lot 1 at the address, the 2789 Butler Road, and now there's Lot 2 or Plot 2, which is the partition part. So there has been sizable investment of time and money by the purchaser.
Already, so they've already, put quite a lot of effort into the process at this point. And so we understood that was, sort of their their way of making a commitment, and we likewise committed to go forward with them, although not explicitly. I mean, it was just sort of, we did the parceling and some of that other stuff based on city requirements.
Correct. We do have a purchase and sale agreement, because that's what that resolution authorized, for us to sign an agreement contractually agreeing to sell the
okay.
property for that
All right.
amount. Now we're to the point where this is conveying the actual deed and
Okay.
closing
Got it.
the
Got it.
property. So,
Okay.
with the passage of this resolution, the property is expected to close and fund next week.
Thank you. Is there any more questions?
Well, I would just say I'm probably gonna be a no, because we already said it was listed at $500,000. They came down $1.3 million. It's been time passed in appreciation, and we're under no rush to sell it. So we really should be getting more money for this property. 18 acres.
I have a question. Would we be liable for any type of court action if we back out of the agreements that we already have agreed to?
There are, yes, there are failure to perform clauses in contracts in this purchase and sale agreement. And we are already in receipt of $230,000 in earnest money that has been made. So there would be cost to the district.
Yeah. Given that, I would move that we move to authorize y'all to do what you need to do with this, sell this property.
With that being said, is there a motion for this? Oh, that was the motion, sorry, excuse me. Second, thank you. So a motion by Director Slawski, seconded by Director Shields. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say.
Nay?
Abstentions? All right, so the ayes have it. That is 5 ayes and 1 no. All right. On to 7.1.4, consider dissolution of the CAL Fund, or CAL Fund. Director Sutherton.
Great, thank you, Vice Chair Fuller. You may recall that the Cal Special Fund was created by the board for the funding of Centennial's portion of the startup costs for the creation of the Center for Advanced Learning, also known as CAL. Centennial has completed paying our portion of all the startup costs, and ongoing operation expenses are funded by appropriations in the Measure 98 High School Success Grant, as well as the general fund. The CAL Fund is no longer needed as a special fund and has a zero balance. It is recommended that the Board of Directors approves the dissolution of the CAL Fund.
Awesome. Do we have discussion? Not seeing any. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Awesome. Is there a second motion?
Second?
Third.
It's okay. So, we have a motion by Director Shields. I was just waiting because it looked like a game. Seconded by, I forgot who did it. Was it you?
I did.
Director Lynn. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Awesome. With that, all the ayes have it. With that, we are making it to new business. We're just flying. All right, so 7.2.1, consider creation of the Athletics Facilities Fund. Director Sutherton.
Great, thank you, Vice Chair Fuller. As our community, student athletes, and the board and staff have identified, there's an ongoing need to maintain and improve district-wide athletic facilities, in service to the Centennial community members and to support co-curricular activities and opportunities for student athletes. Again, under GASB 54 statement, a committed fund balance requires the district to identify specific dedicated revenue sources of which fund transfers do not qualify. Resources must be identified, and primary resources such as property taxes or other revenue sources. The administration recommends establishing a new athletics facility fund in the special funds area of the district finances and budget, and dedicate 100% of entrance fees and event revenue from district-hosted athletic events to this new fund as the specific primary revenue source. The administration recommends the board approve this motion.
Any discussion? Not seeing any. Is there a motion? Oh. Oh, this is new business, sorry. I don't know, yeah, it's new business, sorry, I was thinking it was old business, I'm still up there.
I do
I
I do have a question.
Well, the new business doesn't mean we can't vote on it tonight.
Yeah.
That is an issue and process that we use for policies, not for actions of the board.
So you don't think that we want to hear, you don't think there'd be any public thoughts on this or anything?
I have a question.
Yes, Director Slosky.
Yeah, so where do the proceeds of ticket sales, where does that go now?
Great question, Chair Skolowski. Currently, proceeds are funneled back into the general fund, and they're built in consideration for athletic needs. So essentially, they are already supporting athletics. By creating this special fund, the idea will be that it'll allow us to create a reserve for athletic needs of the future so that we don't have to take from a bond fund or take from a board reserve fund. It's a self-sustaining account filled with revenue from athletic events for athletic facilities. And it's one of the things with my engagement with coaches that they asked for so that they could have a recurring kind of source of revenue funds. And it's something this body's discussed about. If we do have an all-weather field, the lifespan is about 10 years, and the replacement cost is sizable. So we need to have a plan in place so we can stay in it, so we're not taking from other programs in 10 years to do this. So that's the thinking behind that, and I know we've talked anecdotally about it. So I've kind of taken all that feedback and then brought this motion forward for your consideration.
Perfect. Is there any continued discussion? Yes, Director Shields.
I just want to second what Director Southerton said. We've been discussing athletic facilities for a very long time, since 2016, for crying sakes, and probably earlier than that. And this just establishes the fund, right, how it's funded. But it's a huge concern. We've watched what's happened to our neighboring districts, orange districts around the state, who put in all-weather fields and then do not set aside money for improvements to it at that 8 and 10-year mark, and then are looking at a sizable bill to correct that. What we're doing by taking action on this tonight is saying, no, we're aware of those things. We're going to set up a fund, and then we'll have to have the discussion about how, other than what you've already proposed, how we will continue to put money aside for the inevitable upkeep, whatever that word is, of especially the all-weather turf, and maybe other things that will be coming out of this whole athletic facility project that we're embarking upon. So I fully support getting this done, so that we can also educate our budget committee as well as to the need of this and what we may be doing in the future what we will do in the future to fund it for those kinds of needs. Thank you.
Thank you for laying it out like that, Director Shields. I really like how we are trying to really set up for if it's going to rain, basically, in the future for athletics, which we live in Oregon, so that rains all the time. So, but yes, is there any other discussion? Yes, Director Harden.
Yeah, I like the transparency of this. My question is who has access to these funds and how do they go about accessing it?
Great question, Director Harden. This would be like any other fund in the budget. So it would go through the budget committee process. We would appropriate expenses for a year based on the engagement that we have with our athletic stakeholders, our student athletes, our coaches, administrators at the middle and high school level where we have Centennial sports. Identify needs as part of that engagement before we begin the budget process, and then socialize that and share that with the budget committee, receive their feedback and their ideas as we have currently with the budget, and then appropriate it in the actual budget document. And then the board would ultimately be the folks that would approve that budget, right, and approve the spending of those funds.
And would the athletic directors be the people that could spend those funds how they see fit? Or would it be up to board approval for expenditures?
Great question. It would be the specific programs that we identified during budgeting. So during budgeting, we would say, okay, We've engaged with stakeholders because we have ongoing regular engagement with coaches in the athletic community, right? They've told us we're in year 10 of our all-weather field replacement. We need to look at replacing that. Now we need to appropriate it. It would be a capital project in that case. So it would be my office working with the facilities director and the athletics director to manage that project and actually do the work. But it's not an account that people would just get to decide what to spend each year, if that makes sense. It has to go through all the normal, regular, transparent budget process that we do for every other fund.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Is there any other discussion? Not seeing any. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Director Harden. And then we have Director Slowski. I think that's what you.
I'll second
thank
it,
you.
sure.
Never mind. I didn't know. Never mind. So is there a second?
I got it, I'll do it.
Awesome. Yay. So second by Director Slowski. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. All the ayes have it. And then this has been an interesting board meeting. So, we are now, yes, thank you, Director Southerton, for everything. So now we are at 7.2.2, board vacancy discussion. We are discussing that, now that, it's been past the time that we can, Director Curry has stepped down from his position as, I think it's is it at-large position 7? Okay, I'm sorry, yeah. So we are having this discussion to talk about the process of looking for a new board member to join us in this vacancy. Just to let you all know, the reason why we are not going through the election process with the Multnomah County and everything like that is because it's past that date for us to have folks sign up. So we have to go through an appointment process. And so I will, we can start that discussion now.
And on the board agenda, it says Chair Solowski, but it really is Chair Solowski and myself. So I can give you a little bit of information as far as kind of what we've drafted here, but it'll really be ultimately up to the board as far as how you want to proceed with this. So we internally drafted a timeline that has the board discussing this today and then moving forward with posting the position as vacant on Friday and then leaving that up for the required 20 days and that would put us at May 18th, Wednesday, May 18th as the close date, and that would allow the board meeting is the next Wednesday, so that would allow a week for the board to have the applications and then consider if you wanted to move forward with reviewing applications at the next board meeting or just going straight to interviews. I think that might depend on how many applications are received. Again, that's a proposed timeline, but that's up for board discussion if you want to do something different than what we've potentially drafted.
Awesome. Thank you, both you, Superintendent Owens and Director Slowski, for putting this work in. Is there any discussion on the matter? Director Shields.
Just a clarifying question, because we missed the date, right, as you described. This appointment would be for how long?
Be to fulfill the remainder of the term, and that would be to 2025.
So it would basically be a 3-year position?
Correct.
Then I know that 20 days is the minimum for keeping something open. But since this is going to be a 3-year appointment, I would like to be able to, I guess, I always work with things like beat the bushes, right? Go out and search for people who have an interest in serving and be able to serve. Because it's, when you run for a position, you run for the position having some knowledge about what it takes. You've given it some thought, you know what you're getting yourself into. When we appoint a position, it's sometimes a matter of who can we, talk to, giving us time to find somebody who has that kind of interest. And now we're gonna be talking to somebody to say, oh, and by the way, 3 years. It's not just a year or something of that nature. So we have to do it. That's not my question. I'm just wondering if we could say the month of May is our dedicated time for going out and talking with people who have been working with us, people who have served on the long-term, facilities plan, people who have served on the budgets, people who have served this district in a lot of different ways, giving us an opportunity and time, just a few more days to do that work. That's my only comment and concern.
Yeah, real quick, I would like to just say that I agree on that as well too. Especially since it is going to be a 3-year position. It does, we're dealing with a lot of people that are facing burnout as well too, and a lot of, so we need to make sure that we are giving folks the space and time they need to process on what all this position entails. That's just, I wanted to make sure I put my 2 cents in. Yes, Director Lynn.
Yeah, I think I agree. On May 25th seems just a tad too early, and I think June 8th is the better date. We don't seem to have much more on this calendar so far on that, but I think June 8th would be a good day to receive both the interviews and to potentially take a vote.
Director Andrews?
I thought there was some restriction on how long people could serve in appointed positions. I didn't think we could appoint somebody for 3 years. Or am I way off my nut?
And so getting the 3-year answer was a surprise to me.
Yeah.
Let me double check this with Pam Jordan when she's back next week. She'll be back next Tuesday. And I'm thinking just based on that if the direction of the board, unless there's more conversation here, is to have the position up for the month of May, Pam will be back on the 3rd. That potentially puts us at posting the position around the 4th or when they're able to do so. And then you would have from there 7. You'd still have 25 days roughly of the position posted, unless you wanted to keep it open a little bit longer. But if you wanted to close on the 1st of June or something like that. Let me verify that as my simple answer.
Awesome. If there's no more discussion, and since Superintendent Owens is going to verify the question, do we want to go ahead and table this discussion until next meeting in May? Or what do we want to do?
Well, what I can do is I can provide an update to the board or have Executive Assistant Jordan do that as soon as we have the verification there. But what I'm...
Do we want to go forward with...
Yeah, what I'm hearing is I don't know that necessarily has bearing on the length of that position being open, but there just needs to be verification of
Yeah,
how
it's
long
got to be
that
in the
term is.
posting.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah, that's right. Okay, that's right. Okay, yeah.
All right, I move that we close it June 1st and interview June 8th.
Second.
Awesome. So we have a motion on the floor to go ahead and post the board vacancy for the month of May and close it June 1st and look at it June 8th. We have a seconded by Director Lynn. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say nay. All abstentions, not seeing any. A motion approved. With that being said, my computer just closed on me. We are on to future agenda items. Do we have any?
Wow, Vice Chair Fuller, nice job getting us through this agenda tonight. So I'll offer a few that we have just pre-scheduled and then open it up for other board members for other items they may have. So we have the language arts adoption and English learner adoption is coming up. That was originally intended actually to come tonight, but the committee needed a little bit more time for vetting. And since these are 7-year adoptions, I think it's time well spent to make sure it's done right rather than quickly. School calendars, similar. And so we'll hopefully expect to see those at the first meeting in May. We'll also be bringing, I believe, the second meeting in May, a proposal for Centennial Virtual Academy and extending that program. We're still in the middle of doing a program analysis, and so it'll be important for us to have all of the details completed, so what we're bringing to the board incorporates all of the elements of how we intend to roll that program forward, should the board approve us to do so. And then finally, and Director Shields may want to speak to this as well, we had, and when I say we, Director Shields, myself, and Chief Swenson met with McKay Larrabee from Flow Analytics. You may remember that name or organization. They did our boundary review process for the school attendance boundaries. In this case, we had a conversation because they also provide services relative to looking at board zones and which directors represent which zones. So this would not impact students or where they attend school. This would impact the 3 zoned positions of the 7 board positions and which areas of the district those folks represent and which areas of the district candidates can be drawn from for positions from that zone. So we talked with her, and I'll just speak to this briefly. We talked with her about what they can provide, and basically they can provide analysis of some recommendations based on the 2020 census and the boundary review process we just went through for board consideration, a relatively simple process of bringing forward a springboard template of what that might look like, having the board weigh in to say, this looks right, or we might want to change these neighborhoods, and then proceeding if the board likes what was drawn up. So I'll let Director Shields speak to that as well.
We've been looking at this, and it sort of started out with just a conversation about Zone 1, Position 1, Zone 2, Position 2, Zone 3 being not Position 5 or whatever the number is. It's not, you know, it doesn't correlate. Yeah. So that was the start of the conversation, and this was way back, gosh, 5 years or more ago.
Yeah.
And it was recommended by Multnomah County that we do it when we had the census data to help us have, when you look at your total population, even the numbers that you can get in each of the zones. So Multnomah County said, can you wait until the 2020 census comes out? Now we've also been doing boundary review, so we've got Flow Analytics who has all the numbers and all of the information right now, which is really helpful, because one of the things that was said today by McKay was that, oh yeah, we could pretty easily pull that together because they've done so much work with this with the boundary review for attendance areas. This is not attendance, it's just total population and making sure the zones. Remember, everybody in this district votes for every position. It's not like we vote person by zone. But there was another piece that I thought was really important to be reminded of, and that is having zoned districts allows us to make sure that we have people living within a particular area of our district to help us understand what that area of our district looks like, how it operates, what the community groups are. Even though we make decisions as a singular body in a singular group, having that information from, if you will, our zones, our little regions in our districts is important too. So it was a good discussion, but it should be a fairly simple process because we've already had so much dialogue with Flow Analytics anyway, and then we can do that parallel, as you said, Zone 1, Position 1, that kind of thing at the same time. So it's nice to be able to get it done.
So we've requested a proposal that incorporates how much it'll cost, timeline and scope, and then once that's available, then we can share that with the board to see if you want to proceed with that.
Is there anything else?
That's all I've got.
So upcoming agenda item would be, I hope next time we'll be able to go over the board meeting calendar for the coming school year.
Good call. That'll accompany the school calendars. Perfect.
Perfect. With that being said, we open, yes, Director Lynn.
Yeah, thank you, just a few things. We did get some, the Centennial Community Association did get some feedback from Portland Parks and Rec that they would be willing to come back to the table, at least have a meeting so far. So there's a Zoom meeting tomorrow with community members, again, and some stakeholders, some representatives from our our state representative and state senator's offices should also be there. So I'm hoping something might materialize that we might be able to bring to the board at some time in the future. I just sent the link to James with the Park Lane project link. So, and hopefully I asked him to send it out to all of you, so hopefully you can check that out and see kind of where it's been cut back and where we're hoping to build back. Because again, it's right next to where our brand new Oliver Middle School would be. And one idea I've been kind of pitching is graduation plantings. I'm not sure if we've ever done that in the past, but having a graduating class, be able to plant something that grows, it's symbolic, it's something to return to in years and stuff, you know, build some stewardship with the community. So hopefully we can have that. I did go to the OSBA dinner, and we had some people reach out, but they just sent emails to the general email address. So I'd like to revisit the conversation about having our emails on the website, because originally, again, this was just myself. I did not want to make it a larger conversation about everybody else or having district emails. I made a account just for this purpose. I wouldn't mind if I could just tell people, hey, go to the website, check my emails up there. And then the other thing I was going to ask James, if we do have if we see OSBA doing something, say their board of directors, and excuse me for being new, if we object to something like that we see them planning, do we bring that up at a board meeting, or do we just contact our zone representative through OSBA?
That's a good question. Let me research that for you to make sure I offer a proper, not just a quick answer. But my initial response would be to bring that up with the zone representatives. But let me double check on that just to make sure.
Oh, okay, because I'm not sure if anyone else noticed, there was an email this week where they're talking about creating a rural caucus. And not just a rural caucus to talk about shared ideas and stuff like that, but to have an additional rural seat on the board and 2 more seats on the legislative committee simply for these rural people. And they kind of make it as to be a counterbalance almost to the Person of Colors caucus, which was introduced. And it seems to me like we're going backwards. We have districts that are supposed to represent populations of students, and I think they are saying that they didn't feel heard. They're not feeling heard in Salem, and I think there's other factors to that, and we should not be going away from population-based zones and representation back to giving weighted representation to people who in the past have been the catalyst for needing a Person of Colors caucus. Because in the past, when people use disproportionate power to discriminate people or to turn a blind eye to it. So making a rural caucus at OSBA, I'm just against it. Doesn't seem like a good idea. Thank you.
To the comment as far as the board email account, thanks for bringing that back forward. I'm looking at our next week calendar, and we have board training with Vince on Tuesday, May 3rd, and we had asked for him to speak to the merits of that. And then our plan was, after that discussion, to then introduce this back on the next board meeting agenda. So I flagged that for the next board meeting. I guess the question would be on that, while we're on that topic, is are we intending to do that training virtually with Vince? Because I want to make sure to respond back to Vince.
I'll be virtual too.
Virtual. Yep. I'll let Vince know.
Director Shields.
Oh, I was on, sorry. OSBA policies, we've got a backlog. So we just need to keep that, keep it going.
Anybody else? Not seeing anything. Is there a motion to adjourn? All right, motion to adjourn. Adjournment at 7:55 on the dot.